your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello and thanks for joining us. Late Thursday afternoon, Ottawa reversed its decision to allow unvaccinated Canadian truckers to return across the border from the United States without quarantine. The federal government says they released that statement in error and that unvaccinated or partially vaccinated Canadian truckers will still not be exempt from pre-arrival, arrival, and post-arrival testing and quarantine requirements. American truckers will also need to be fully vaccinated by January 15th, or they will be turned away at the border. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced pressure from the federal Conservatives and trucking lobby groups to drop the vaccine mandate for truckers, saying it could result in driver shortages, disrupt our supply chain, and drive up inflation. Now, because of the federal flip-flop, transport stakeholders are expressing their concerns as they feel this decision leads to unemployment and added expenses. Angela Stewart spoke with one local company that says the reverse decision could have helped the issue.
In Canada, over $1 billion worth of goods travels across the Canada-US border each day. Al Nelson of CJD Trucking thinks the states will follow suit in mandating vaccines.
I have a feeling the U.S. may reciprocate, so we'll be back to they're going to require Canadian drivers to be fully vaccinated, as the Canadian government allows or has mandated that American drivers need to be fully vaccinated, but Canadian drivers don't.
And if that happens, Nelson believes it will have a big effect on the trucking industry.
It will definitely have an impact on the supply chain because some people will walk away from it.
Nelson says JD truckers haven't ran into any problems for those who cross the border daily, but thinks people will have issues if goods are not being transported.
I mean, you can't get parts, you're waiting for a long time for parts and things like that just because of that. And I think that will continue.
Any delay or disruption to that workforce, drivers' ability to move freely, is going to have economic impacts for sure.
Trevor Lewington of Economic Development Lethbridge says the transportation of goods is crucial for the economy.
Any disruption, any delay, as we've seen with supply chain and the events in BC before Christmas, can have massive consequences. So really important to keep plants running, keep people employed, and keep goods moving.
On January 22nd, the U.S. will make a decision whether to bring in their own vaccine mandate for cross-border trucking.
Thanks, Angela. With students back to in-person learning this week, school districts in Edmonton and Calgary are claiming a shortage of staff and teachers who are reportedly out sick with COVID-19. The Lethbridge School Division says it is okay in terms of teachers and staffing numbers. In a statement, the division says it's monitoring staff and student absenteeism rates. The number of unemployed in Lethbridge and Medicine Hat saw a spike in numbers from November to December. A 1% increase was added to December job losses, which come in at 6.5%. Total employment in the region of Lethbridge and Medicine Hat also has fallen by 7,000 over the past few months. Numbers in Lethbridge alone saw the unemployment rate increase 0.6% from November to December as well. Trevor Lewington, the CEO of Economic Development Lethbridge, says most of these job losses came from high-touch industries.
So that's things like retail, food and accommodation, those kind of things where there's a lot of customer interaction. So it's a bit counterintuitive. I would have expected, potentially in December, the peak shopping season for retail to have gained more in employment. But again, I do think whether it's Omicron, as a variant necessarily by itself, or whether it's just, continued COVID challenges and the restrictions that the province put in place, we've definitely seen those industries affected more so than any other. And I think that's definitely something to take note of as we head into January.
In Alberta, overall, the unemployment rate fell by 0.3 percentage points in December and now sits at just over 7%. This is the lowest monthly figure reported in over 2 years. Albertans looking forward to camping this summer have started booking their spots. Due to the high demand for campsites, Alberta Parks has made their online reservations a year-round service. Individual campsites can be booked in campgrounds that are open up to April 11th or 90 days in advance. Group camping can be booked by up to 180 days in advance as of last Wednesday. Campers will still be required to book within each campground seasonal dates. Alberta Parks says campers can book a maximum of 10 consecutive nights per reservation. Officials say campers can also stay for a total of 16 consecutive nights in the backcountry, but multiple reservations must be made. Up next, after the break, we share the perspective of an Alberta MLA on what in the world is happening in our province, and will Alberta lead the way in advocating for freedom principles in our nation? Stay with us. Welcome back. So far this January has been a wild ride for both citizens and politicians. It may seem that we are in the upside down world, to take a phrase from a popular series. To discuss Alberta politics and try to create some order out of the chaos, our own Hal Roberts sat down across the internet with Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf. Here is a look at part of that interview.
The province of Quebec is looking into issuing fines for those who are unvaccinated. Will Alberta go down a similar path? Premier Jason Kenney has said in the past that getting the COVID-19 vaccine will not become mandatory in our province, but also recall a time when we weren't supposed to have any of those vaccine passports either. To discuss this in more detail is Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf joins us now via Zoom. Nathan, would Alberta maybe potentially follow Quebec's lead and look at maybe bringing in a tax for the unvaxxed? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely not, Hal. That is not the people of Alberta in any way, shape, or form. And I think we're actually much closer to moving towards a more productive and unifying kind of stage of this pandemic towards that endemic stage. And we're really looking forward to shifting the conversation towards the immune versus the non-immune, or those who are still at risk versus those who are not at risk. So we're really trying to get towards the end path here. And I don't think that's an avenue that we're going to go in any way, shape, or form.
Nathan, Canada's Environment Minister Stephen Gebo says he wants to eliminate our country's oil and gas sector within 2 years. I mean, that's the bread and butter of the Alberta economy. How is that even possible, and why would you want to threaten an industry which provides billions of dollars and creates thousands of jobs?
It's not possible, Hal. And frankly, to be honest, it's ridiculous to suggest. Virtually every home in Canada is heated by oil and gas or electricity produced from oil and gas and its derivatives. So not only would we freeze out many people, in Quebec alone last year, there was that rail derailment, and there were many seniors in particular, and many homes in Quebec that were at risk of freezing to death because of lack of oil and gas. This is just not a practical suggestion to make. It's not helpful. And that's without considering the hundreds of thousands of jobs that would be lost, the billions of dollars of revenue. Quite frankly, to even suggest it creates more uncertainty. To actually do it could quite literally bankrupt not just Alberta, but the entire country. And I think that the minister really needs to take a new look at his role and his responsibility, and maybe look at some real possibilities instead of suggesting things like this.
What kind of financial footing do you think Alberta's on right now? I guess we got nowhere to go but up following the pandemic, the recession we were in, but oil is now over $80 US a barrel. Are we in pretty good financial shape heading through 2022?
Well, we're definitely in a better position than we were, and I think this underlines the challenges that Alberta has always faced with the oil and gas sector and the ups and downs of a resource market. We are still very much looking at making sure that our spending is appropriate to our income, but we're definitely trending in a very positive direction, and I hope to see some very good numbers when the budget is introduced later in February.
I chatted with Jobs Minister Doug Schweitzer recently, had him on the show, and he talked about the 130,000 jobs over the past year making their way to Alberta here. Where do you see a lot of industries really thriving outside of the oil and gas sector now that oil has rebounded?
Sure, there's lots of sectors that are doing very well. We see our STEM and research, our film industries, our financial and financial technologies industry. We hope that this year we'll see a strong rebound for our tourism. Our agricultural industry has been steady throughout, and construction is definitely on the rise, not just in the province, but also here in Lethbridge. So a lot of bright spots. that will continue to grow as we come out of the winter season and into spring and summer, and very much looking forward to that.
Nathan, many political parties' popularity have taken a big hit during the pandemic. The UCP is no exception. What will it take for your party to rebuild its image, especially in our region, leading up to the next provincial election in 2023?
I think, in a word, Hal, I would put it as service, and meaningful service to the constituents across the province, helping them get back to the lives that they had before the pandemic. This pandemic has disrupted everyone, as you just noted, particularly governments. But I'm very pleased to represent Lethbridge East, and see roles like my new appointment as Parliamentary Secretary and Water Stewardship for the Minister of Environment. Water is a very important issue for us down in the south. To be able to have that voice at that table, I would hope shows Lethbridgeites that I'm serving their needs.
After the break, we have a special interview for you. We are going to hear about the need for evidence-based assessments and what's restricting Alberta's economy and empowerment. Welcome back. In 2021, we were shocked by the fires and floods in BC. And here in southern Alberta, we endured extreme heat and drought. These events are hard to experience and also hard to forget. People look for answers during events such as these. Michelle Sterling of Friends of Science joined Hal Roberts earlier this week to talk about southern Alberta coal and the weather changes that we've had over the past year.
Now, before we get into some of the environmental questions, I want to chat with you a bit about coal. As you know, coal mining is a major impact here and the southern Alberta economy for jobs, but a lot of people are also quite concerned when it comes to selenium making its way into the Oldman River, impacting our water quality here. Now, the NDP began to phase out our coal, but your group has a lot of information about how Alberta coal is actually not a major polluter. Can you explain?
Yes, well, we were quite opposed to the NDP coal phase out, largely because since I had worked at Alberta Environment, I knew that our air quality in Alberta is excellent most of the time. And we have very substantial environmental impact assessments for all these projects before anything goes ahead. And so, I think environmentalists try to paint the scenario as if they're the only ones defending the environment when we had about 1,200 people working for Alberta Environment when I was there, many of them scientists. So, first of all, Alberta coal is very high quality. It's low sulfur, it's surface mineable. So that means that reclamation is quite easy to do. And some of the places that have been restored have been turned into very nice recreational areas. And also, it's really a hedge against what we're seeing in the world right now to have coal, which is basically price stable, and we own 800 years of it here in Alberta. And to be abandoning that when we see natural gas prices are spiking worldwide, there's a supply problem. The UK people are facing thousands of pounds, dollars, of costs for their energy this year. Most people will be pushed into heat or eat poverty, and that's affecting us too. That energy crisis will hit us too. And what have we done? We've phased out our coal plants, which provide affordable, reliable power, and we have the energy supply here. And now we're buying coal power from Montana and Saskatchewan and putting another burden on taxpayers because that money leaves the province. And further to that, the irony is that many of the health unions were very adamant in the coal phase out campaign. But what does modern medicine entirely rely on? Electricity. And it needs affordable, reliable, high quality, meaning no dips and surges, because that will set all the equipment off. All that specialized equipment has to be calibrated. So, coal would be the ideal factor. And about 75% of the power in Alberta is used by industry as well. So it was an integral part of the Alberta advantage.
Michelle, last year we saw the town of Lytton, BC burn down to the ground. It was very tragic. And there have been a lot of forest fires in British Columbia and the atmospheric rivers, which brought a lot of rain floods. Certain voices are claiming this is due to climate change. What do you say about these events?
Well, the town of Lytton has sadly burnt down about 4 times before in history. So when people tell you that something is because of contemporary man-made climate change, first thing you should do is look at history and see if it's happened before. And the same with the floods. The biggest flood in the Sumas Valley, in the Fraser Valley area, was in 1894, and it has not been exceeded yet. So, the atmospheric rivers are associated with what's called the Pineapple Express, and it's a change in the jet stream where the subtropical jet stream picks up a lot of water from the ocean and carries it, literally like picking it up in a big aerial bucket and throwing it on land when it reaches landfall. And if you look historically, there's a Scientific American article on Sacramento where in 1861-62, they had 43 straight days of rain. That doesn't mean that humans have no impact on climate change, but it definitely means that a carbon tax, building wind and solar farms, will not do anything to stop these kinds of events. We instead need to be prepared. And if we're building on a floodplain, we need to properly build those dike systems, and we have to build for the likelihood that there will be this kind of condition.
We'll be right back, but if you want to see the extended version of Hell's interview with Michelle Sterling, you can make your way over to bridgecitynews.ca. When we come back, a Southern Alberta woman helping dogs in distress. Welcome back. Here in Lethbridge, we love our dogs. They're an important part of our families and communities. There's a Southern Alberta dog rescue that is at risk of closing its doors, though, due to lack of support. This is especially bad news for the animals who need it. BCN's Naveen Day visited the shelter in Calgary recently and heard some unsettling stories. The following report contains images that some may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
To say that Dawn McDonald loves dogs is an understatement. 2 years ago, she sold her house and moved in with her daughter to focus her resources on running a dog rescue full-time.
We go into Saskatchewan areas and on the reserves, and we have permission to go into these reserves, and we go in and we rescue these dogs that are in dire need of rescue. They're hurt, they're injured, it's cold.
She says that dogs are allowed to run free in rural communities, which allows them to pack easily. This makes them dangerous to the community. According to McDonald, there was a recent incident in Manitoba where a 15-year-old girl was attacked, and so a cull was ordered.
And they went and shot dogs. And I think it happens more often than they want us to even realize. And luckily, after the 101 dogs were shot, they allowed the rescues to go in and get the rest of the dogs out there, and we were able to get 54 of them out. There was a dog with a bullet hole, so it was obviously shot, and they had to get it to the vet. That was part of the call down there. One dog that stands out is Rocky Road, and he was filled with porcupine quills. And he was there for probably a week. He had lost a lot of weight, and he was gonna die. And we ended up getting him. He had 6 surgeries. He's in a fabulous home now.
At the time of this broadcast, Bridge City News was unable to get a response from the Manitoba community, which ordered the culling. However, Lethbridge veterinarian Dr. Ian Gibson shares with us the dangers of stray dogs forming packs.
If you have dogs that are sort of feral in the sense that they don't get a meal every day from someone, they might end up having to sort of fend for themselves in the sense that they have to find food. And often it's sort of beneficial to these dogs to pack up and sort of form a team to, potentially hunt and, get food that way. Obviously, if you're, unlucky and you might end up in that situation where, you might be in a vulnerable position, these dogs might, potentially harm you.
Close to 800 dogs have been rescued and adopted since the Almost Home Canine Rescue came into operation 2 years ago. However, the shelter is under continuous threats of closing down due to lack of supplies and finances. The call for help has reached far enough to get the attention of a Canadian country recording artist. Julian Austin and his band have decided to organize a fundraising event in Calgary, with the proceeds benefiting the shelter. Austin says he hopes to raise a much-needed $25,000 for the organization.
We're going to be holding it on February 6th at the Top Brass Restaurant and Lounge in the Northeast Calgary. And we're going to have 7 bands, and it's just going to be great. We're going to have donation bins at the entrance coming in.
The Almost Home Canine Rescue has support from volunteers that share McDonald's love for animals. However, according to her workers, it is McDonald who has an unmatched fervor for the dogs.
I have seen this woman go for days without sleep, days without a shower, probably days without food. I have seen her crawling under decks at minus 53-degree weather to dig a dog out.
Coming down here and seeing what Dawn, and I call it her army of angels, you know, what they do here at the rescue is amazing. And just the stories you hear and, you know, the pictures that I've seen of the, you know, these animals that have been abused and they've been neglected and they're not loved. And all the times that I've had puppies and dogs, I mean, you know, it's unconditional love.
If we don't speak up for them, who will? If we aren't their voice, who's going to be their voice? We need to step up and we need to yell and we need to holler and we need to help these dogs.
Even with a fundraising event in the works, McDonald says there is an immediate need for help. She is asking for donations of puppy food, pee pads, gifts in kind, or cash donations. She says her veterinary bills alone cost approximately $20,000 per month. Contributions can be dropped off at the shelter or made online at almosthomeyc.com. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
When we return from the break, we'll share our top local stories from this last week. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter. And if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for all of our latest videos. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Here's a follow-up to a story we first brought you on Tuesday. City Manager Craig Dalton announced his resignation from the position after less than 2 years, the previous 2 being Bramwell Strain and Jody Melly, who had an interim role. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details.
Craig Dalton started as Lethbridge's city manager in May of 2020. He mentioned he was leaving due to a recent life decision, but he wouldn't divulge any of those details.
I'm very grateful for having been part of this team over the past coming up on 2 years, and it was not an easy decision to make, but it's just a life decision.
Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagan says City Council would like to have a new long-term candidate for city manager.
And at the end of the day, the city manager is but one position in the organization. We've got an extremely competent senior management team as well.
Higgins says he has nothing but praise for the departing Dalton and the work he's done for the city throughout the pandemic.
Gosh, I reach out to Craig quite often. It doesn't matter what hours of the day, and sometimes I'm sure he's maybe not all too appreciative, but he has done an amazing job, especially when we had these KPMG reports in, navigating through them. There's a lot of different initiatives that council has had over the past year that has really tasked Craig with a lot of at times challenges, I imagine, but he's really shone and come through that. And again, I can't say enough, and I know that I speak on behalf of council, of our respect for Craig and what he's done with this organization.
Higgins says the city is open to hiring an internal or external candidate for the new city manager position, and Dalton's last day will be sometime in March. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thank you, Micah. The 2022 Rotary Club Agriculture Scholarship Program is offering a $10,000 scholarship. Rotary Club Committee Chair Wayne Lindwall explains what they look for in applicants.
It's not just about academic achievement, it's also about their role in the community and their participation in club activities and athletics and leadership skills and advocacy for the principles of Rotary and advocacy for agriculture in Southern Alberta. So every year we've been amazed at the quality and caliber of the students that have applied. And every year we say, we wish we had more money to give the students. And the $10,000 obviously goes a long ways to covering not just their tuition, but some of the costs these days associated with attending college or university.
Applications for the scholarship program close on January 31st. An Indigenous man is recounting his experiences during his time serving with the Canadian military in Afghanistan. As Micah Quinn reports, he says that serving as an Indigenous military member has its shares of challenges.
Preston Crowchief served in Afghanistan with Canada's military from 2009 through to 2010. Crowchief says he dealt with PTSD over several occasions during his time in the military.
I call it my somber New Year's experience, so my sergeant, his name was Kirk Taylor. He got blown up in an explosion in 2009. There's a news reporter too. Her name was Michelle Lang, and George Mioch, Chidley, and McCormick. Their vehicle got hit, and at the time I really downplayed it. But being over there when you lose your friends, it's a lot different. It's really strange, but you pushed all those emotions down, right? You don't want to feel fear or whatever, right? You still want to do your job, but all that stuff did hit me later on.
Crowchief also had to go through several challenges like racism when he was in Afghanistan.
Just the way those guys talk, they're like, oh man, this French guy doesn't know how to drive, and I'm sitting in the back and they're like, get the big Indian into the driver's seat. Let's give him a shot. And I'm like, but I just started working with those guys, right? And then that's the hard part that I had to go through is how come I had to learn how to work with all these brand new people? And that seemed to have been a common theme throughout my career.
Glenn Miller served with Crowchief in the 20th Independent Field Battery based out of Lethbridge. Miller says it's important for Indigenous representation in the Canadian military, and they can do that through programs like the Bold Eagle to get started.
And so that program is designed to expose them to the military culture, build up their own life skills, like all other recruits. And then if they choose, they can then volunteer for the military, either the regular forces or the reserves.
Despite the hardships of war, Crowchief says he does recommend other Indigenous youth to join up in the military if they so choose. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thanks so much, Micah. There will be more Bridge City News weekend when we come back after the break. If you want to see extended versions of the interviews that you've seen today, head over to bridgecitynews.ca. Come back after the break when we talk to home media mom Val Olson. Thanks so much for watching Bridge City News Weekend.
They recognized that the left, they are well-funded, they're organized, and they are doers. And so that showed that we're going to have to take it up a notch.